So for this deep dive, we're starting by, acknowledging a fundamental truth of the digital age. The speed of digital defense has to constantly, and I mean constantly, keep pace with the audacity of digital offense. And late in 2025, that pace was just blistering. We saw this major high-stakes security alert. It was focused mostly on Apple devices, but the implications, they just immediately rippled across almost every major web browser you might be using. So our mission today is, well, it's pretty straightforward. We're going to unpack two actively exploited zero-day vulnerabilities, CVE-2025-14174 and CVE-2025-43529. And I know those numbers sound like alphabet soup, so don't worry. We'll cut through the technical jargon. We want to answer three core questions. First, what makes these flaws such a critical weakness? Second, why do the sources all seem to point to them enabling these highly sophisticated targeted attacks? And third, why did fixing two specific Apple flaws require this unprecedented multi-platform response involving Google and Microsoft?
And look, you, the listener, you really need to grasp the severity right away. When we say actively exploited, I mean, that is just about the most alarming phrase in cybersecurity. It means these aren't just, theoretical vulnerabilities that could be used. No. Attackers were already using these flaws. They were operational in the wild, being used to compromise systems before the security patches were even developed. This needs your urgent attention, especially if you're using modern mobile devices or, a Chromium-based desktop browser. This was a clear and present danger.
That sets the stage perfectly for Section 1, which is the timeline. Because the way these security patches rolled out, it really reveals just how fundamental and widespread the impact of that first flaw was. That's CVE-2025-43529. The urgency was recognized across the whole tech landscape almost at the same time, that's highly unusual. The timeline shows that Google, for instance, they fixed the initial flaw in the desktop version of Chrome several days before Apple even released its official updates.
Right. And not just Google. Microsoft also moved incredibly quickly to patch the same underlying vulnerability in its Chromium-based Edge browser. That was on December 11th. Just think about that for a second. You have Google and Microsoft, two giants, rushing out patches for a flaw that, at that point, was still mostly associated with Apple's core browsing engine.
Okay, wait. I have a question on that timeline then. If Google and Microsoft managed to push fixes out so fast, sometimes, like you said, before it even had an official description, does that suggest that, Google's threat analysis group spotted it and could just fix it faster because Chromium is more flexible? Or is this just a sign that Apple's patch cycle is slower, because they have to bake the fix into the whole operating system?
That's a really critical distinction, and it's probably a bit of both, but I'd say mainly the latter. Google and Microsoft are fixing their own implementations of certain components, and they can push Chrome and Edge updates very, very rapidly. Apple, on the other hand, has to integrate WebKit fixes into iOS, iPadOS, macOS, tvOS, visionOS.
New ecosystem.
Exactly. It's an entire ecosystem that has to be tested before release. So the cross-platform fixes confirm the root issue was shared, but that time lag really highlights the complexity of Apple's system-wide patching. And this wasn't just, corporate urgency. The U.S. government signaled how high risk this was very quickly. CVE-2025-14174 was added to CISA's known exploited vulnerabilities catalog, the KEV catalog, on December 12th.
Let's just clarify what that KEV catalog means for anyone listening. It's not just some big list of bugs.
No, not at all. CISA's KEV is the official flashing red light list of vulnerabilities. It means they are proven to be under active attack by adversaries. It actually mandates that federal agencies stop everything and patch immediately. When something hits that list, it's a huge deal. It means the threat is real, active, and high value.
And what sparked this whole high-speed reaction was this really unique collaboration. The initial report for the first CVE was filed jointly by Apple's Security Engineering and Architecture Group, SEAR, and the Google Threat Analysis Group, TAG. That was on December 5th. That kind of cooperation between two major competitors, SEAR and TAG, working together, it just highlights how severe this threat really was.
They knew they were dealing with something foundational.
Right. They recognized this wasn't just a bug in one company's code. This was a shared, almost existential attack on the foundation of the modern web. That cross-platform response makes a lot more sense once we get into Section 2 and understand the core tech here. Let's talk about the central player, WebKit.
So WebKit is an open-source web browser engine. Think of it as the skeleton and the muscle of Apple's Safari browser. But here's the key fact that explains everything, all those fixes for Chrome and Edge. Because of Apple's rules, WebKit is the engine used by all third-party browsers on an iPhone and iPad. Chrome, Firefox, Edge. If it's running on iOS, it is forced to use Apple's WebKit engine under the hood.
And that is the fundamental risk we really need to get across here.
Absolutely. It creates what we call a monoculture risk on Apple's mobile platform. If an attacker finds a zero-day flaw in WebKit, they've basically found a key that unlocks every single web browser and any app that shows web content on every single iPhone and iPad in the world. It makes the targeting process so much simpler for sophisticated actors.
Okay, so let's dive into the specifics of that first flaw, CVE 2025-14174. According to Apple's notes, it was a memory corruption issue right in WebKit. Can you make memory corruption a bit more accessible for someone who isn't a coder?
Yeah, of course. So think of your computer's memory like a massive library, and each open app, like your browser, gets its own specific shelves to store data. When the browser needs to save something, it uses a precise address on those shelves. Memory corruption happens when the software, because of a flaw, tries to write data outside of its assigned shelf space. This is what we often call an out-of-bounds memory access. The technical details describe this flaw as an out-of-bounds memory access in Anglia in Google Chrome on Mac. Cool. Let's break that down. Angly is a graphics translation layer that WebKit uses. It takes web rendering instructions and, translates them into calls the graphics card can understand. So, because of the flaw in this layer, an attacker could point you to a specially crafted web page, and when your browser processed that page, the flaw let the attacker reach outside the browser's designated shelves, causing that memory corruption.
So if they can mess with the allocated memory, they're basically destabilizing the whole environment. That's bad. But the second flaw, CVE 2025-43529, that's where the attack becomes truly catastrophic. This one is also in WebKit, and its potential outcome is arbitrary code execution.
That's it. If memory corruption is shaking the foundation of the house, arbitrary code execution is the attacker being handed the master keys and, well, moving in as a permanent invisible guest. Modern operating systems have layers of defense, things like address space layout randomization or ASLR, to stop a simple memory corruption from becoming a full takeover. The memory corruption flaw was likely the crucial first step. It was used to map the computer's memory structure, to bypass those defenses, and prepare the ground.
And then the second flaw, the one allowing arbitrary code execution, that's the tool they use to inject their malicious code, the spyware, into that now compromised memory space and force the computer to run it.
Precisely. All the information we have points to these two vulnerabilities being exploited in tandem chain together, and the sequence is just devastating. Step 1. You visit a malicious website. It triggers the first flaw, corrupts the memory. Step 2. That corruption is used to bypass the OS security features. Step 3. The second flaw is leveraged to inject and execute the full payload. The entire compromise happens just from the browser processing one web page.
Wow. Often without the user having to click on anything specific at all. That kind of chain is the signature of extreme sophistication. And that brings us perfectly to Section 3, the specific target profile of this whole operation.
Right, and when we talk about 0 days, it's worth just reiterating what that means for you, practically. A 0 day is a vulnerability that is already being exploited in the wild before the developers have had a single day, 0 days to create a patch. The defender is always playing catch-up.
And the language Apple used in its advisory, it was highly specific, and it really should make everyone sit up and listen. They stated they were aware of a report that these two CVEs may have been exploited in an extremely sophisticated attack against specific targeted individuals.
That combination of phrases tells you the entire story. The term extremely sophisticated suggests the attacker had significant resources, time, money, expertise to develop a two-stage 0-day chain that could reliably beat Apple's security.
And when you pair sophisticated with specific targeted individuals, we're definitely not talking about your average, widespread, opportunistic attack.
No, we are talking about high-value targeting. This kind of wording is the security industry's signal that these exploits are being delivered by or on behalf of really high-resource actors. We're talking state intelligence agencies or the private firms that sell this capability to them. The goal here isn't ransomware or crypto mining. The goal is delivering high-end spyware that can steal communications, track your location, and turn on your microphone and camera.
So the implication here is that these attackers are spending, millions of dollars developing and deploying these two-chain 0 days, just to target maybe a few dozen or a few hundred specific high-value targets around the world, people like journalists, political opposition, human rights activists.
That's the landscape, exactly. Why spend millions on an exploit? because the information they get from those specific people is worth more. And security companies often withhold the exact specifics of these attacks, which devices were hit, what the payload did. That's to stop the broader market from reverse engineering the flaw and creating cheaper, more widespread versions of the attack.
But this raises a really important question. Given the sheer cost and difficulty of chaining 2 WebKit 0-days, why focus on the web engine at all? Why not target something less defended, like an email client or some random third-party app?
It's a great question because WebKit is ubiquitous on iOS. As we said, Apple's monoculture means that an exploit delivered through a simple link in a text, an ad, a pop-up, can compromise the device no matter which browser the target is using.
Ah, so it's about reach.
Maximum reach for minimum delivery effort. They don't have to guess if the target uses Chrome or Safari. They just need them to open one link. It's the highest leverage access point on the entire platform.
The narrative here is just crystal clear. This was a surgical attack, but it targeted the most foundational component of your mobile device. And that brings us to Section 4, the actionable steps. Because even though the initial attacks were highly targeted, once a vulnerability is public, less sophisticated actors immediately try to adapt it. So the need for immediate updates for all users is non-negotiable. Don't wait until you feel like you're a target. The defenses you download today are protecting you from tomorrow's broader attacks.
And we can be your quick reference guide here because the fixes are comprehensive. They required a simultaneous release across Apple's whole ecosystem. The patches for both CVEs have been implemented in, let's list them, iOS and iPadOS 26.2. If you're on a current-gen device, this is your immediate priority. But Apple also recognized older systems needed protection, so iOS and iPadOS 18.7.3 also got the fix.
That's crucial. Really crucial for users who don't or can't update to the absolute newest iOS.
It is. And for desktops and other devices, the patches were included in macOS Tahoe 26.2, tvOS 26.2, watchOS 26.2, visionOS 26.2, and very importantly, Safari 26.2. If you use any Apple product that touches the internet, there is a patch available for you.
And for users on slightly older macOS versions, there's specific advice. If you're on macOS Sequoia, that's the V15 branch, or macOS Sonoma, the V14 branch, you need to update your standalone Safari browser to version 26.2. That specific Safari update fixes the WebKit flaw even if you stay on an older OS, so please check your version numbers now. Make sure you've applied those patches.
So if we just synthesize this whole deep dive, the story is one of unprecedented urgency against elite threats. First, WebKit is the shared foundational core of your mobile browsing, which simplifies the attack surface. Second, 2 0-days were chained together, memory corruption, then arbitrary code execution, which shows the hallmarks of state-level capability. And third, this whole thing necessitated swift, synchronized fixes across Apple, Google, and Microsoft to protect a very specific group of people.
That urgency and sophistication really drive home the stakes. And that leaves us with a final thought for you to carry forward, building on this focus of these sophisticated attacks. If the foundational engine that powers almost all your mobile web interactions, WebKit, is being actively leveraged by state-level actors to target specific individuals, what does that tell us? What does it tell us about the hidden security battlefield that ordinary users like you and me rely on every single day? Maybe the next time you see a routine operating system update notification, you should adjust your perspective. It's not just fixing some minor bug. You are downloading defenses against unseen threats that are operational right now, targeting the critical infrastructure that you use to access the world. Knowledge is power, and knowing which button to click and when is absolutely key. Stay informed, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.